The Vietnam War would see some of the bloodiest battles of modern warfare. Most of us think of the war being fought in dense jungles or rice paddies, but tanks also played a crucial role in this war. In this video, we'll take a look at 4 US tanks of the Vietnam War. The M24 Chaffee Light Tank. The M24 Chaffee was a leap forward in light tank design. Manufactured during World War II, its design was so successful it would be exported to numerous other countries and stayed in service with many armies right up until the 1980s. The tank was driven by 2 V8 Cadillac engines with a top speed of 56 km an hour. The front armour was relatively thick for a light tank at 1 inch, but other areas of the tank less so at only 10mm. The main 75mm gun and 30 caliber machine gun were mounted in the turret, with a second 30 caliber mounted in the hull. The tank performed well during the war. However, once Vietnam rolled around, US armoured vehicles had vastly improved. Thus, the M24 was mainly utilised by the South Vietnamese forces. It saw action in the Battle of Hue with varying degrees of success, as ultimately, being a light tank, most modern anti-tank mines or hand weapons could penetrate weak side armour. The M67 Flamethrower Tank. Flamethrowing tanks such as variants of the M4 Sherman were used to great effect during World War II against heavily entrenched Japanese forces in the Pacific. As time went on, a need for an improved version was sought. In 1954, work began basing a flamethrower tank on the M48 Patton chassis. The main armament would consist of the experimental E28 fuel and pressure system flame gun. The thickened fuel for the flamethrower was stored in the large 1,500 litre central tank. The system was pressurised to 325 psi, allowing a 60-second burst from the nozzle. Maximum range for the flame gun was 250 metres. The fuel was ignited by 24,000 volt spark plug igniters in the front of the nozzle, inside the firing tube. A carbon dioxide snuffer system was used to extinguish any residual fuel burning after being shut off. The M6 flame gun was housed in a tube to mimic the appearance of the 90mm gun equipped to the standard M48 Patton, this in an effort to disguise it as a standard tank. As well as the flame gun, the gunner also operated a 30 caliber machine gun. The M67 would often be accompanied by 2 trucks. One would carry and refuel the tank's napalm, while the other would recharge the compressed air system. This was, of course, a downside. Because of this, the M67s were restricted in what operations they could take part in. Another problem was the noise it made, which was so loud the gunner and commander could barely hear each other, even through the intercom. In the Battle of Hue, 2 M67s accompanied by M48s were the first tanks to enter the city. The guerrilla nature of the Vietnam War allowed it to be used effectively to clear dense areas where enemy could be hiding. The M48 Patton Medium Tank. This, the third to be named after US Army's legendary commander during World War II, the M48 was pressed into service in 1953. But by 1958, the 90mm main gun was no longer adequate against the newer Soviet tanks, and a 105mm main gun was incorporated. The armour was improved due to intelligence reports over the Soviet gun capabilities and increased to 110mm. Given the tank was to work closely with the infantry, there was a small telephone box on the back with a red light to inform the infantry that the tank commander was about to communicate. 60 rounds were carried of high explosive or armour-piercing capabilities. The main protecting gun shield housed the 30 caliber machine gun with 6,000 rounds. The dual-purpose armament was by the commander's 50 caliber machine gun with 500 rounds. Due to the nature of the Vietnam War, these were deployed primarily in infantry support roles, with backup to large-scale search and destroy operations. Due to their volume of fire and the protection they offered, they were also well employed against covering units in the jungle. Very few tank-to-tank engagements occurred with the exception of the Battle of Ben Het in 1969, when M48 Pattons destroyed NVA T-76s. They also performed well against landmines and rocket-propelled grenades, providing their crew with much-needed protection. By the time US forces were withdrawn, hundreds were passed on to the South Vietnamese. They immediately saw heavy action and did manage to slow down the massive final Ho Chi Minh offensive in 1975. Ontas Tank Destroyer. The Ontas Tank Destroyer was a light armoured anti-tank vehicle developed in the 1950s. It's mounted 6 106mm recoilless rifles as its main armament, which could be fired in rapid succession against targets. While designed as a tank destroyer, during Vietnam, most did not engage enemy armour, as the North Vietnamese army deployed few tanks. It was more widely used for direct fire support for the infantry. Its light armour was effective against small arms, but vulnerable to mines and rocket-propelled grenades. Its light weight made it remarkably mobile for the amount of firepower it carried. At ranges of 450 metres, its rifles could completely knock down walls. Its ominous appearance even sometimes made the enemy run in fear. The Ontas had several problems though, including a small ammunition load, a very high profile for such a small vehicle, and the need for the crew to exit the vehicle in order to reload the guns. This would obviously expose them to enemy fire. In the end, only 297 were ever officially completed. As always guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that subscribe button if you want to grow your knowledge on military history.